Hello ladies and gents, my name's Jack. Welcome to Peach Guitars. Today's showcase is going to be on what is easily one of the most popular and versatile ranges of signature instruments from one of the most popular and versatile guitar players out there today, Mr. Pete Thorn. So, without further ado, let's delve into one of the best signature collections you will see today. So, I very specifically mentioned there that this is a collection, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that Pete Thorn had but one signature Suhr guitar. However, over the last few years, that range has expanded. So it initially began with that classic dual humbucker Pete Thorn model from a few years back. Amazing guitar, very versatile. And now it's expanded a little further. So now there are 3 other models that we're going to touch on that bear Pete's name. And by the way, if you're unfamiliar with who Pete Thorn is, first of all, I don't know how you found our video, because any guitar player on the internet knows who Pete Thorn is. But just in case you don't, Pete is by far and away one of the very best guitar gear demonstrators here on YouTube, as well as being a very prolific and highly in-demand session guitar player, playing with the likes of Melissa Etheridge, Chris Cornell, to name just a couple. So the expertise that Pete has as a fantastic session musician and artist in his own right filter directly into what he requires from musical equipment, and that perfect blend means that the guitars that he's designed in conjunction with Suhr guitars really just work for so many different guitar players, as well as Pete's own specific needs. So many players, especially customers here at the store, buy these instruments by the bucket load, and they're just so happy with what they're able to get out of them. I would include myself in that. Every time I play one of Pete's signature guitars, or indeed his amplifier that we'll come on to a little later in the video, I just remind myself, I don't know why I don't already have one of these in my life, because it kind of ticks pretty much every box that I would require as a guitarist looking for something to cover a huge range of sonic variety, as well as just something that feels great, is made of great quality materials, put together really, really well by very talented craftspeople over in California. It's really one of the best all-round guitar packages. And now the great thing is that the range, as I say, has been fleshed out. So there are 4 choices to potentially tickle your fancy. So what we're going to do is delve into each one in turn. We're going to start with the classic, the dual humbucker guitar, and then we're going to delve into the ones that have come along since. So there's 2 HSS versions of the Pete Thorn signature, as well as the most interesting new one, which is the traditional 90. So let's delve a little deeper. So let's start where it all began, with Pete's relationship with Suhr as a signature artist. Now, it's worth mentioning that Pete has been a long time endorser of the brand, endorsee of the brand rather, has played their instruments for years and years. So when this model first came out, I'd say about 6, 7, 8 years ago, it actually coincided, I think, around the time that Pete came here to do a clinic in store, which is still one of the best videos that we have on the channel. Really popular video. Pete's such a great explainer of his concepts as a musician, and indeed it was a really good showcase of what he wants to get out of an instrument, and that's exactly how this guitar came to be. So the HH version refers to the dual humbucking pickups, and at the time, and still to this day, I think this is a very unique instrument in the Suhr product lineup, namely because despite being an S-style guitar in its body shape, a lot of the attributes that it has actually come more from a slightly different guitar genetic makeup kind of camp. And what I mean by that is the tone woods on this guitar. For example, you have a chambered mahogany wood body with a plain maple top, mahogany neck with Indian rosewood fingerboard. So these are specs that you might be familiar with from other brands. Very different style of guitar. However, the marriage of these two things, the S-style body with the S-style electronics and the more kind of single cut-esque type wood configurations, mean that this is a very unique sounding guitar. It has a lot of presence and attack and articulation, but it has a little bit more of that mid-range girth that we associate particularly with mahogany. So really it's one of those instruments that splits the line and divides right in the middle for a lot of people, and that's again why these were so popular when they came out and remain so now. Tonally, I think this is one of the best guitars Suhr offers because you have the option of 5 different pickup selections with an additional bridge series parallel switch down here on the tone control. So by default you hear bridge pickup, both pickups together split, both pickups together in full humbucking mode, neck humbucker, and then neck in parallel. So it's a really slightly different configuration to what you would expect from a 5-way, but it just makes so much sense. It really means you can navigate this guitar very easily and get tones that you can't specifically get out of certain other instruments. To play this guitar as well, it's extremely comfortable because you've got a compound 10 to 14 inch fretboard radius with big jumbo stainless steel frets, locking tuners, and these guitars are updated a few years back with the sort of semi-locking Wilkinson bridge saddles, so tuning stability is fantastic on these things as well. So as a utility instrument, it covers a lot of ground, but also just look at the thing. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful guitar designs. It's super simple, very, very sleek. The fact that it's plain maple does not detract from anything because it's just a very classy looking instrument. There's a few finishes available. There's this blue, there's a red, there's a black, and there's a gold. All of them look great. I really like this guitar, as you can probably tell. And tonally, of the 4 that we're going to cover, this has probably the darkest voice to it because of the 2 humbuckers. I love the sound of the Thornbucker in the neck and the Thornbucker Plus in the bridge, and the configurations you can get of the 2. So if you're an HH kind of player, this is the fairly obvious choice. Okay, guitar number 2 is the HSS variant on the Pete Thorn model. Now, on first glance, you might be forgiven for thinking, Suhr make a lot of HSS style instruments, so what's unique about this one? I had those same questions. However, playing the guitar, it's very clear that it is still a Pete Thorn model. It just has this intrinsic tone to it and this very particular feel. And tonally, you can tell there are certain things in this guitar that really appeals to Pete's sensibilities as a player. I've noticed that Pete really likes a bright sounding instrument, a very clear, articulate sound. And I kind of like the same thing. So whenever I play any of these guitars, it's instantly familiar and it's responsive in a way that I expect. You have the same 5-way pickup selector as in a standard S-style pickup configuration, and the same series parallel option split for the bridge humbucker. However, that's where it kind of stops being a fairly conventional S-style guitar, because again, its genetic makeup pairs an alder wood body with a gorgeous roasted maple neck and an ebony fingerboard. And what I was talking about before about that clarity and that cut and that brightness, the ebony really comes to life with that. I feel each note really does pop, and the combination of these woods with these pickups just does something a little bit different. It's also quite a weighty guitar compared to most S-style guitars. That does something different as well. There are plenty of very lightweight options from Suhr. However, I think this one has a little bit more heft to the tone, and that combined with the ebony in particular, I think does have quite a unique tonal profile. So it's very clear that it's still in keeping with the HH model. However, Pete's desire to have HSS options when he wants those single coil tones a little bit more authentically, it's still in the same family, it's still in the same ballpark. So if you're familiar with the HH guitar, but you also would like something with these pickup options at hand, this seems like the most obvious choice. Now, guitar number 3 is this one, which is quite a looker. It's quite a dazzling aesthetic that this guitar has. However, it's very, very similar spec-wise to the last HSS guitar that we talked about, with a couple of crucial differences. One that's particularly obvious is this different bridge, this FU tone bridge, with the EVH detuner on it. An amazing feature on any locking trem guitar, because it means you can just pull that out, instantly go to drop detuning, instantly put it back again when you want to go back to standard. That's the most obvious thing. The other significant change with this over the regular HSS is the bridge humbucker. So this guitar has an SSH Plus in the bridge Bit higher output, a bit darker sounding, a bit more muscle to it. And to me, this kind of locking style bridge always does a unique thing to the mid-range. It makes it quite pointed, and you lose a little bit of low end perhaps, but you gain all this extra punch and this articulation on the front of each note. This pickup just exaggerates that even more. So if you're more of a high gain player, if you're more of a rock kind of player, this guitar is going to feel very familiar, very comfortable. Obviously it looks the part as well, but all of the specs that I talked about with the previous HSS guitar still apply. So it's still an alderwood body, roasted maple neck, ebony fingerboard, 60s soft V profile on the neck, 10 to 14 inch compound fingerboard radius, and the jumbo stainless steel frets. So really this is kind of just that last guitar on steroids, but it still has a lot of the same tonal profiles with the V63 pickups, the single coils, so if you want those clean tones it can still do that. But it's just interesting to see what basically two component changes make to the kind of, not only the tones but also the feel of a guitar like this. It does feel quite different to that other HSS, and yet it still feels like it has a very distinct purpose, and I know that that's the case for Pete when he was designing this guitar with Suhr. So the final guitar we're going to take a look at today is one of the most recent additions to the lineup, and I think it completes it quite nicely. So this is the traditional 90. The name would suggest exactly what you're thinking. The bridge humbucker is the crucial difference here. So this isn't actually a humbucker, unlike those other HSS guitars. This is the Suhr PT15 bridge pickup, so an obvious take on a P90 style single coil pickup, yet it houses their very, very good SSC2 single coil silent system. So all of the single coil pickups in here are true single coils, and yet there's a dummy coil in the guitar that kills the horrible hum. So with this instrument, again, there's a couple of fairly obvious changes, the pickup being one, also the fact that this is the only one with a roasted maple neck and fingerboard. So that alone brings a different character to the party. I think it's also a stunning roasted maple, 3A bird's eye maple on the front and the back. Feels very different, feels much more like a kind of vintage antique guitar. There's a bit of checking on the body, not relicking, but just checking, so it feels like it's kind of worn in, broken in. And in my estimation anyway, the debate rumbles on, but in my estimation, it does make a difference to the tone and the playing experience. It feels a little bit more open, this guitar. Definitely more in line with the vintage tones that Pete likes to get. And I guess that's exactly what the brief was with this. It was to combine elements of the S-style Suhr guitars with some more modern features, as well as having that more vintage temperament in terms of its tone and its feel. So when I say that this guitar kind of does finalize and flesh out the lineup, when you consider you have a dual humbucker option, you have two different HSS options, and then you have this. What I found when I was playing this is it kind of fills in all the gaps. So this has a lot more of a squawky kind of nasal mid-range, way more of a classic thing. It sits somewhere in between dual humbucker and the HSS guitar in terms of its versatility and its mid-range content, and it's all about that. I think you'll find with any guitar really, but specifically when we're splitting hairs quite as finely as we are with these guitars, it's all about the very unique mid-range character and compression character and so on that they possess. So it's all these tiny details, and I do think they add up and make a very unique instrument in each particular case. Now it's worth mentioning that this particular guitar, being the Candy Apple Red variant, has an older wood body, so the same as those two HSS guitars we talked about before. There is, however, a trans white finished guitar which is built with a swamp ash body instead. Okay, so the last and arguably most important piece of the puzzle today is the amplifier, which is also Pete's signature. All of the tones coming directly from the PT15 IR amplifier. Now this amp has been around for about nearly 7 years at this point, and if you want even more info than I'm going to go into right now, we did actually film a video with this amp when it first launched back then that covered even more of the feature set that it has. But it's held up so well in that time. It's still, in my estimation and opinion, probably the benchmark for most guitar players when you're looking for a true valve-driven amplifier, but that has all of those modern features that make it just so easy to use at home or in a live environment, or indeed in a studio environment like we are today. So, in a nutshell, the PT15 IR amplifier is a distillation of the PT100, the big boy, the 100 watt version of Pete's signature amp that he's had for ages and ages. 15 watts makes a lot more sense for a lot more guitar players in a whole array of different situations in terms of volume, and obviously just the sheer size of the thing. It's way more practical, but you still have a lot of the same features and tones that the big one has. For example, the 3-channel layout. So channel 1 is your classic American style clean. Channel 2 picks up where that leaves off and gives you those kind of 800 British type tones, a little more compressed, more mid-range. Channel 3 is actually quite similarly voiced to channel 2, but it has more gain, more compression, even more mid. Channels 2 and 3 share a 3-band EQ. Channel 1 has its own bass and treble controls. Where it really crucially comes down to being able to give you the wide array of tones in a very friendly way, because it would be too easy to just have all 3-band EQs on every single channel. However, that would make the amp very big, unwieldy, probably more expensive to make. So where the real crucial detail about this amp comes in that I really appreciate is that each of the channels has its own respective bright switch. So even though channels 2 and 3 share a 3-band EQ, I really don't feel the need to adjust between the two because of the bright switch. All of the tones that you're going to hear in this video, I did not touch the amp settings. So I've got the bright switch on channel 1, the bright switch on channel 2, and the bright switch off on channel 3. So for me, and I'm sure a lot of players, I like to use this to have my really pristine high headroom clean sound, channel 1. Channel 2 gives me that crunchy, very open, bright, dynamic, sizzly kind of rhythm tone, and channel 3 gives me a bit more gain, a bit more compression, and a bit of a darker, softer edge for lead sounds. Now, the beauty is though, you can set that up any way you want. You can have 2 high gain rhythm sounds, you could have 2 high gain lead sounds. Anything's possible, and they've still managed to keep it very simple to understand, simple to use, and simple to dial in great tones really quickly. Aside from that, you've got a global presence, global master volume, and where this really gets clever is the IR side of things. So you have Suhr's reactive load built into this amplifier, so you can use this completely standalone without the need for a load or a speaker cabinet to be connected. You can then take the line out and record directly to an interface or go straight to front of house, and you will hear throughout this video certain clips which just use that line out. And then you're using the onboard IRs, and there are a few in there, and you can assign individual IRs so that when you switch to, say, channel 2, your IR also switches versus what you have on your clean sound on channel 1. So it's all been thought through to give you a really seamless experience without the need for menu diving and having so many options that you just become completely fatigued with choice. There's still plenty of different tones in there, and yet it's all focused in the same place. It all comes from the same kind of tonal standpoint, which, by the way, is driven by a couple of 6v6 power tubes. So it's kind of got the perfect balance of the American tones, it's got the raunch of the British tones with the higher gain stuff, and I think you'll tell from the course of this video there's a whole range of different sounds, and I did not feel compelled to touch the amp once. The only other part of the signal chain that you'll be hearing throughout the course of the video was the Line 6 HX effects, which again, when I did the original demo for this nearly 7 years ago, I was probably using that exact same rig. And it just goes to show how well this stuff has aged, and the tones are still fantastic. So any delays, reverbs, bit of chorus, a little bit of compression here and there, it's all coming from the HX effects, and it just marries up perfectly with an amp like this to be able to control the amp channel changes with TRS, for example. You can do that from a lot of switches and multi-effects, but to me anyway, this is kind of the perfect little marriage of really versatile guitars, really versatile amp, really versatile effects unit. And it's not just about the versatility at the compromise of tonal quality. Everything sounds stellar, even 7 or so years on. Alright then folks, so that's a closer look at the Pete Thorn collection. It's quite an impressive collection of instruments, isn't it? I'm sure there was one at least that stood out to you as being just a great sounding guitar, if not all of them. I think they all sound great, but they each have their own little thing. And in conjunction with the fine amplifier that we talked about and the very simplistic but effective effects unit, you can really craft a rig very, very easily with these components. And indeed, in playing these guitars today, I had very, very little thought go into what I needed to get out of it. I just set the amp how I knew it would work, set the effects I wanted to use, and each of the guitars did exactly as I expected them to do. However, each one had their own little personality quirks. And it's unfair, I think a lot of modern guitar brands and designers get an unfair attack sometimes of being maybe a bit sterile, maybe a bit predictable and so on. However, none of these guitars were predictable in their tonal qualities. They all have something different, they're all something unique, and that applies, in my opinion, to Suhr guitars at large. In fact, every single Suhr guitar I've ever played, you kind of know what you're in for, and yet there's always something that surprises you a little bit. And it's further testament to how good a relationship we have with Suhr guitars. We're very proud to be a Suhr dealer. I mean, me personally, I absolutely love the brand, always have done that, and we've done many, many videos in the past talking about Suhr and all their brilliant products. So several years later, we're still talking about Suhr and their brilliant products, and these guitars I think will remain in the catalogue for quite some time. So congratulations to Suhr guitars, congratulations to Pete for making such brilliant design choices and fantastic instruments, and congratulations to you, because hopefully you've just found something useful that may help you in the search for your next guitar or amplifier. So that's about it folks. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like. Please hit subscribe if you want to see more from us in the future. And if you want even more information on any of these guitars or any of the other Suhr products that we stock, you can find that out on our website, which will be linked down in the description below. And while you're at it, drop a comment down there with your thoughts and maybe pick your favorite of the 4 guitars. And as an aside, I'm interested to know, is there another guitar player or artist that has such an extensive and well thought out signature collection? I think it's a really tough challenge. I'd like to know your thoughts. So that's it folks. Thank you very much as always for watching. Take very good care of yourselves, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye.